Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is another wildcard week. It is day 4, Saturday. We're looking at Black Flag by Dan Fraga. This is issue number 1, cover dated June 1994. Did not get this originally back in the day. I was out of comics by this time. This is near the end of the comics boom of the early 90s, somewhere around where the bubble kind of burst and the air started seeping out, and I've shifted my focus towards playing music in bands and playing drums, but I will come back pretty soon to comics. Just missed this one originally when it came out. Thought it'd be of interest just because, first of all, the what caught my attention in the dollar bins, got this for $1, so it was worth it, was the cover. Obviously right away I recognized Todd McFarlane's inks. Wasn't quite sure he'd drawn it. Look at the credits down here. They're pretty prominent. So realized that Dan Fraga was the artist who was being inked by Todd McFarlane. Knew him from Bloodstrike. Yeah, Bloodstrike. Kind of was one of those Extreme Studios Rob Liefeld clones. And then just, on the strength of this image here and Todd McFarlane inking him, I felt like there was a style shift, even though it was being helped by McFarlane's aesthetic. But definitely was not as much in the vein of Rob Liefeld, right? Meshed really well with Todd McFarlane's inks. And, when I saw these kind of childlike characters down here, right away thought of Arthur Adams and his depiction of children in one of those, I think it's an X-Men annual or something, where the X-babies and all that. So I kind of saw where that was coming from. And if you know a little bit about, Todd McFarlane lore and Rob Liefeld lore, they also took a lot from Art Adams in the art department, and aped a lot of the stuff that he was doing. So I feel like Dan Fraga is one of those guys as well, I guess, and that's kind of what he's telling us here. And that'll even be more obvious as we look through the comic and I read the credits page and what's found there. So let's open her up. First thing you'll notice before I mention anything is the fact that it's black and white, kind of an anomaly for Image Comics around that time. So not something you would see every day. I still think this comic was meant to be colored. It's just maybe there's a deadline thing or a money thing. I have no idea. If anyone knows maybe what happened behind the scenes and why this book is not colored, let me know in the comments. But I definitely think this was intended to be colored, but then wasn't. The paper is not the regular Image paper. It's kind of like a super high quality newsprint, I guess is how I describe it. I mean, I think it looks good. The inks sit well. The art is nice and crisp. It's not muddied or kind of, blotchy or almost like it's seeped into the paper. It's very crisp and clean. So it works on that side of things, and also maybe gives it a little bit of an indie kind of look, I guess, just from the fact that it's black and white. But I'm assuming that they're still charging regular colored comic cover prices, which, yeah, I do feel that they are. So I'm guessing something happened here. Maybe, the comic was colored, but, there was some sort of conversion problem, and it was just easier to revert back to the, or something happened here, I'm convinced. Again, if you know what it is, let me know. So Dan Fraga, creator, story, art. Eric Stevenson does the script. Kurt Hathaway does the lettering. And then these little indications down here. Chapter 1 dedicated to Art Adams and Dale Keown. Chapter 2 dedicated to Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane. And Chapter 3 dedicated to Shiro, Biz, and Barry Windsor Smith. So I don't know if this is just kind of random, and he's just, kind of giving us an idea of who his biggest inspirations are, I guess, art-wise. So I don't know if he's trying to say that, the chapter 1 storyline somehow reflects Art Adams and Dale Keown a bit more. I guess that's where the inspiration for the characters might come from, because the first story focuses on these two, I guess I'm going to assume, are alien children, because they only have 3 fingers, not 4, which is right away a little bit weird and off-putting, I gotta say. Just makes hands look weird when there's not enough, unless you're a big monster or something. I don't feel it quite works. I guess I see where, okay, so I think I just figured out this is like a long shot reference, right? It's got to be what it is. Yeah, so there's the Art Adams. The Dale Keown, I'm not quite sure, where that's coming from here. It's not really in the art style, the hatching. Anyways, maybe because there's monsters involved, and Dale Keown's known as a guy who likes to draw monsters. I'm not quite sure. Little details. He's got the extreme dog tags popping out here. Pay attention to his pants, all right? Maybe not so obvious here, but later on in the comic, there's just some weird stuff visually going on with the pants. And I'll point it out when we get there. All right, so they're confronting this big demon guy, and I definitely see more of the Art Adams influence on this guy, and the rendering as well. How he's, choosing to finish off the art. It ends up sometimes looking like a copy of Jim Lee as well, because he's another guy who really was inspired by Art Adams. I mention it again because, you know, he influenced a whole generation of those. A lot of those, most of the image guys who've got the flashy kind of West Coast style are basically kind of trying to channel Art Adams. This thing, you know, around the heads, with the weird kind of hatching, you know, to give like a luminous effect or surprise or emphasis, I guess, on those things. Definitely ripped off from Art Adams as well. Again, the three-fingered hands, I don't know if that works. It just looks odd, especially on these like kid-like characters. Just makes them weird. And yeah, so the way he's drawn the pants here, once again, it's like, you know, the crotch area is a bit looser and there's folds and stuff, but then, you know, the pants are just extra tight, but then he's got them rolled up around the boots. It's just very off-putting. I don't know how else to describe it. I feel like he's running around, you know, it doesn't look like pants to me. It looks like he's got rings around the top of his boots. He's got naked legs, and then I don't know what's going on there. Just looks weird. And the three-fingered thing too, like things shift. So she's had the three fingers up to now, right? You can see it here. And then all of a sudden she's got four fingers, right? I like just this little shot of her crotch here, just a little bit of it. And then once again, you know, she's got three fingers on that same hand that she used to grab that rope. And then she's got four fingers on this one here. So you know, a bit of the Rob Liefeld disease where there's a lack of consistency with the character designs. And I find it odd just because, I mean, it's not like it's the, first of all, this one here is on the same page where you've established this character has three fingers. And this is the next page. So you would think you know, I guess he just only ever looks at the last panel, not the whole page. Very odd. And again, look at how weird it looks here. It's like the kid's got giant hands. Again, I feel most of the artwork works, except when it comes to these kids and their faces. The faces specifically just feel like they don't have much volume, like they're almost flat, no matter what angle he draws them from. This one's not bad, but yeah, like this guy has volume and shape and a bit of shading and stuff, but the kids' faces are just seem to be like flat, 2D. Again, when you've got like shots of characters like this, and there is something to be said about the kind of indie quality of some of these panels here. That almost like, because there's no image coloring on top, you kind of see a bit more of it. Like he's doing some more kind of parody and cartooning and stuff, which is fun, right? Here's Madman, or a parody of Madman, like Liefeld Madman, I guess is what that is. Captain America over here, I forgot to mention on the first page, right? We could see Warlock and a bunch of other characters from that period in X-Men lore where Art Adams was doing a lot of stuff. And there's those pants again. Like, oh my god, just so odd. And some of the inking is just, yeah, this down here is kind of rough, right? The finished inking for this last page here, man, he got through this page really fast. Deadlines were coming. And the proportions as well, like, you know, is he a midget? Like, I don't know. The legs are just so short. It's that weird extreme kind of troll influence, I guess. So chapter 2 is dedicated to, who was it? Todd McFarlane. Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane. So, you know, maybe the inspiration behind the gorilla character is like you know, he's really into Cygor or something. I don't know. There's a whole thing in the 90s with gorilla characters. Again, Art Adams had one, right? Monkey Man and O'Brien, I think it was called. So, you know, you think you would credit Art Adams for this again in chapter 2, but no. Better faces, better cartooning here all around. It's some of these panels where, again, I do feel the black and white highlights the fact that some of this is very indie and not necessarily mainstream in its composition. Some of these panels. A lot of it is very image, of course, big panels and stuff. Kind of, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad or anything. This is pretty darn cool. It's got to be using some sort of microns or something to do this. It's definitely not traditional inking. And maybe that's what also, yeah, you can see more microns in this stuff here. And that ends up, again, giving it that kind of slightly cartoony, parody-driven, independent vibe. All this stuff here, you know. not worked over and poured over, just kind of drawn organically, right? No proper perspective or anything, but it really works. I really like these actually back here in the background. Broken window, does a pretty decent job here with the glass spraying. I've had to do a few of those. You get better at it as time goes by, excuse me, and that's why artists probably redo them. And it's kind of a comic book trope. I mean, did this necessitate a, vertical double page splash? I don't think so. It's all right though. Could have been a one-page splash. Would have worked just as well, and you would have had an extra page of story. Yeah, it really seems like every last page of these, like the first issue is basically 3 short stories, 3 chapters, right? It really feels like the last page is the one he spends the least amount of effort on in the inking and stuff. Not that it's horrible. I mean, the silhouettes you can get through that quickly, works pretty well. The foreshortening here is a bit meh, quick down shot with a bit of detail. And this, I gotta say, actually is probably the best panel overall on this page here. Very cool, very minimalist, great use of silhouette, just straight up lines. Definitely micron, right, for the inking here. And then this is a chapter that's dedicated to Simon Bisley, Barry Windsor Smith, and Shiro. So I'm going to assume it's got more of a I guess the character again is what seems to be maybe the main influence behind the character is what he's pointing out in that first page, in the credits page. I could see, I guess, I don't really see the Barry Windsor Smith. I do see the Simon Bisley. I guess kind of the big, proportions and the musculature, right? And these here's a shot that's like, while I say that, totally Simon Bisley. Even Dan Frega is doing a bit of that, when you go in with your fingerprints in the artwork. So yeah, he's really channeling Bisley for sure here. In some of the areas that seem a little rougher, maybe, than usual. I would be interested to see what was intended for the colors, what that would look like. I don't know if there's ever been a colored version. So this is definitely some Simon Bisley kind of image stuff, right? Big double page. Splash for this is maybe a bit more worth it than what we saw a few pages ago. This kind of Wolverine Sabretooth kind of guy is naked here. It's interesting. Thankfully, the leg covers up what I'm going to assume is a very hairy man piece from the amount of body hair this guy's got. Looks like he's punching right through him, so let's see if that's what actually happens. Oh, and it was all a dream. One of those, eh? So there's our main character, whoever he is. I guess he's Flag. I don't know for sure. I mean, Fraga clearly heard the name of the band Black Flag and thought it'd be good for a comic, which don't think it's a bad name. I like the sketchbook here. I think, looking at this, did he know that McFarlane would be inking this? Because it's almost like I can feel some McFarlane influence in just the pencils here. He's got some Rob Liefeld with the big guns and whatever, and this guy's kind of the cable dude. Or maybe is it Guile from Street Fighter? That's what I would. But the foreshortening on the gun and the hand here is so much better than Rob Liefeld already in the pencils. We see it on the cover. Let's look at that. Yeah, see this whole foreshortened gun and the way his fingers in the holster and everything is just way better than anything Rob Liefeld's ever done at that angle. So I do think there are areas where Dan Frega is definitely excelling at things more so than Rob Liefeld. This here feels a little more maybe Jim Lee-ish in its application and its anatomy. More of the Art Adams influence on something like this, and then more of the Rob Liefeld, over here. And I kind of like this. It's the bass? Oh, bass. Excuse me. The ass. That's funny. Okay, so he's got bass bends and he's, yeah. I'd lose the mohawk, but I think the basic character design is kind of fun. Like, what was going on with 90s kind of design, right? Asymmetrical, chains. That, or you're some sort of government agent, right? FBI dude. And again, 2 more pinups that are pretty darn good overall. Pretty intricate, costume work and design, which again leads me to think that these artists definitely thought this was going to be color. Like this whole, I don't know who the artist is, AV and Stucker, no idea. Great piece. I think it's a very beautiful piece of work, but I definitely think there's minimal shading on it, you know what I mean? And just a little bit of contrast here. So I definitely feel like that was 100% intended for color and never happened. Got another couple of cool pinups here. Carl, I'm going to assume that's Allstater. I think that's how you say his last name. Can't read this guy's signature at all. Matthew Snot Sonnet. I'm probably saying that wrong. Kind of interesting. Very different style from what we're used to from Image. So I don't know where he's coming from. Maybe one of Dan Fraga's friends or something. And then we had this piece, which I was like, I'm pretty darn sure this is Dan Panosian. I recognize his inking. But then, you know, I couldn't find his name because every book here has a name or a title. Something. It's a lot to read through. And then I kind of looked down here and this book says Dan Panosian on the cover. So I'm going to assume it's him. You know, still kind of doing aesthetically that somewhat kind of West Coast, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld aesthetic, right, in this work. But Dan Panosian already had a lot of potential back then. And if you've seen his artwork today, I think it's amazing. He's really, you know, evolved into an amazing artist. But you could see some of what he does now in modern times in even his back then what would have been a clone-y kind of extreme kind of style, right? So he's always been a solid inker. And like the way he creates the volume here is way more reminiscent of stuff that he's doing now as opposed to stuff he was doing for Extreme or when he was inking over Rob Liefeld or something, right? So this section here definitely harkens to the future and what we're going to see with Dan Panosian. Even though it looks like a pretty typical Extreme piece, you got to pay attention to a few sections, which there's just really that, I would say, on the figure itself, right? The shadowy hatchy lines on the toes and the hands here. This down here, that's a very 90s kind of thing. Dale Keown was doing that, right? But when you look at the background elements, and especially the plants up here, right, you're going to see some kind of sketchier, quicker, more, you know, for lack of a better term, movement lines, right? Like you're not worried about creating a nice line. You're worried about doing the movement. That's going to create like a quick burst line. And he's doing some of that up here, and it looks great. And it looks, again, more like what he's doing today. He's creating an interesting texture on this carpet here that I don't think is typical of any kind of Image style artist of that day. And the couch here, right? Even though we recognize his line, it's a thicker kind of, I feel like he's actually used brush here, or at least some sort of Sharpie brush, right? Different from the kind of tighter inking here to create the texture, that leathery, creasy texture that works really well on this throne or this chair that he's sitting on. So, you know, this to me feels way more illustrative than, or classically illustrative than what the Image guys were doing at that time. So, like I said, little signs here and there of what Dan Panosian would eventually become, or what we see today from his artwork, which I think is great. So there you go, guys. That is my review of Black Flag #1. If you're still out there watching the videos and you're subscribed, thank you so much for your loyalty and sticking with me. If you're watching but you are not subscribed, please do so below. It really does honestly help the channel, helps us grow. We're on the road to 500 subscribers where YouTube actually considers us a real channel. So we're almost there, guys. I'm hovering around needing about 75 more subscribers to hit that milestone. And also when we do hit it, I'll be coming out with the next installment of Big Baby, a review of my own series. So I've done issue 1 and 2, which you can find on the channel, and I'll be covering issue number 3 once we hit that 500 mark. So everyone out there, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow and have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.